Okay, we're recording. Good morning. We're in Perek Yud Aleph in Sefer Daniel, the beginning of the Perek, but the beginning of the Perek is not the beginning of the story. And the reason is that Yud Aleph actually becomes a continuation of the prophecy in Perek Yud. If you remember, they saw the person, Daniel saw the person, Lavush Badim. He was a magnificent figure dressed in the clothing of a Kohen, of simple linen clothing. And at the time we understood that that was Gavriel Hamalach. And Gavriel Hamalach is speaking to Daniel through this dream. And in this dream, he told him what he did at that time. And then we pick it up actually in Perek Yud Aleph, Pasuk Aleph. Vani b'shnat achat l'Daryavesh Hamadai. And we give the time frame that this is the first of the years of Daryavesh, the Mede. This is before the period when Cyrus is going to be taking over as the king. Omdi l'machazik u'lema'oz lo. That Gavriel says that back then, in that first year, because if you remember, the previous parak was the third year of Cyrus. He says, back then, I, Gavriel, was standing in place. Now, standing in this place, Omdi actually is a shem poal that is a form of saying I was speaking on behalf of. I was standing, we would say in English, I was standing up for the person. I was standing up for Gavriel, and I was the source of his strength. Now, the question is, what's going on here precisely? Rashi says that what is happening is, Gavriel says, there was this battle that was going on between the various angels, the angels of Persia and Media, the angels that also were of the Jewish people. And with this battle that was taking place, Gavriel says, I was standing up and trying to support Michael, because the angels of Parasu Madai, of the Persian nation, they were trying to overwhelm the Jewish people. So I was defending Michael, who was defending the Jews. Says the Abarbanel, actually, it's talking about I was standing up for Michael, and I was standing up for Michael, the angel, because Michael was working together with Daryavesh, was actually promoting Daryavesh to support the Jewish people, that ultimately we wanted Cyrus to take over. Cyrus would then send the Jewish people back to the land. So in one way or the other, Michael, the prophet says, at the beginning of Darius the Mede's reign, I was Michael the angel. We're talking angels. Was the beginning of that Michael said that I was standing up and I was trying to help. Gavriel says I was trying to help Michael. Okay. Now says Ve'ata. And now Gavriel the Malach tells him, listen, now at this moment, I've been talking about what was. Now I'm going to tell you what's going to be. Emet agid lach. I'm going to tell you the whole story. I'm going to tell you all the truth. Hine od shlosha melachim omdim lefaras. There are going to be 3 more kings who are going to stand for the Persian nation. Varavi'i ya'ashir osher gadol mikol. And the 4th is going to be more powerful than all of the rest of them, will be more wealthy than all the rest of them. Ukechezkato ba'oshro ya'ir hakol et malchut Yavan. And with his great wealth, he's going to, and we don't really know what this word Ya'ir, we'll get to in a moment, but somehow arouse the people regarding Greece. Now, we get into a historical problem for a moment. If I'm talking at the time of Darius the Mede, that means I'm talking about the time right before the Persian Empire. We know from documents, from historical documents we found, they're not really paper, but they're more the steels, the clay tablets that we have and the various stone tablets that were left, that there were a lot of kings during the Persian Empire. It started with Cyrus. Cyrus was 538. Then Cambyses, who's known in Hebrew as Kanbuzi. Then Darius the First. Then Achashverosh, our favorite Achashverosh. Then came Artaxerxes the First. Then came Daryavesh the Second. Then Artaxerxes the Second. Then Artaxerxes the Third. Then Arsas. Then Daryavesh the Third. And Daryavesh the Third was the one who was killed by Alexander the Great. So if you look at the list, we have altogether 11 kings of the Persian Empire. And here it says there's going to be 3 and a 4th. And we know clearly that there's this famous historical problem that Chazal have, where we're missing a couple of hundred years from Jewish history. We've talked about it before. There's this disconnect between the length of Jewish history, and it all centers around the Persian period. Because according to Chazal, there weren't as many kings. We don't have as many kings recorded in our texts. And if we didn't have them recorded, that period was really something that was a bit mysterious to the whole world until archaeological finds in the late 1800s. So according to Chazal, there were really only 3 kings. Not the 11, there were 3. There was Cyrus, Achashverosh, and Dariush. That's it. And in fact, if you remember, there's that famous medrash that says Darius was the son of Esther and Achashverosh. History rejects that. History says the order actually, again, was Cyrus, Cambyses, Darius, Xerxes, Artaxerxes, or Achashverosh, and Artaxashta. So history rejects that initial order. We start out with 5, the 5 different names primarily. How do you get to a 4th king then? If Chazal say there are only 3, forget the history for a moment. If Chazal say there's only 3, how do you get to a 4th king? So Rashi, and also the Ibn Ezra, says that it's the 4th starting with Darius the Mede. And so from the time he's talking, there's going to be that he's number 1, Darius the Mede, even though he wasn't Persian. Okay. He says you have Darius, and then you have Cyrus, and then you have Xerxes or Achashverosh, and then you have Darius, okay, Darius the Persian, and that's number 4. That's the way Rashi takes it. However, he does quote Rashi. Rashi quotes this unusual historical book that was written based on Josephus. It's called Josephun. It's not Josephus. It was written later in time. And he says that there, if you look in Josephun, you do find the name of a 4th Persian king. Chazal had 3, Koresh, Achashverosh, Dariush. And all of a sudden in Josephun, in the historical book of Josephun, there is the name Cambyses, which is Cambyses. There's a 4th king. So Rashi does present the possibility that it could have been Cyrus, Cambyses, Xerxes, Achashverosh, and Dariush, and that's the 4. So Rashi says either I start counting from Darius the Mede, or there is this 4th king that we hear about. The Ibn Ezra says in the name of Rav Moshe HaKohen that actually the numbers we have is like this: Darius the Mede, Cyrus the Persian, or Cyrus the Great. Achashverosh, he says, is the same as Artaxerxes, as Artaxashta. So that's Darius, Cyrus, Achashverosh, Darius the Persian, okay, and Artaxashta, who is the 2nd Artaxerxes, who comes later, and therefore, if we start with this, Cyrus is the 1st also. He introduces, in essence, an Artaxashta, who comes later in time. So whichever way it is, and we're not sure of it, what we're saying is that in a period of time in the future, according to this prophecy, it was going to be in 4 kings. The 4 kings may have started with Darius, may have started with Cyrus, but at the 4th king, he's going to be extraordinarily wealthy, and that wealth that he's going to have is going to be Yair Hakol et Malchut Yavan, will arouse them all about the empire of Greece. Rashi says that because he's going to be so powerful, this final king, who we know is actually Darius III, that he's going to fight against the Greek Empire, against Alexander the Great. This is his prophecy. According to the Ibn Ezra, he says, actually, this last king is going to be so wealthy. How does a king become wealthy? He taxes his people. And so he's going to have so much great wealth that the Greeks are going to be able to get allies from within the Persian Empire to overthrow this final king. So we don't know if it's going to be the Persians who are going to go against the Greeks or the Greeks who are going to go against the Persians, but we do know that there's going to be a war. And this war that's going to take place begins to be described in Pasuk Gimel. But when I get to Pasuk Gimel, and this I gave you another sheet, and you should have a sheet like this. It's colored. I did send it out. I will bring it up on the screen in just a moment for everyone who's remote at this moment to see. It is actually an interesting historical piece where Rav Meidan, who is one of the Rosh Yeshivas of Yeshivat Har Etzion, chooses to try to tie these psukim we're going to be learning in with the historical realities that we're aware of. And so as a result, hold on 1 second, I just have to get it. And so he brings in the sheet, and I passed out the sheet, and I'm just going to go over a moment with the way the sheet works, and then we're going to go over the sheet, and we're going to go back into the psukim. Okay, Pasuk Gimel, we're talking about that mighty king is going to be, the king he's going to go against is going to be Alexander the Great. Okay, now you see that I color-coded the sheet. Whenever it's red, it's the southern kingdom. Whenever it's blue, it's the northern kingdom. Because, as you will recall, when Alexander the Great died, and he died after only 13 years of rule, he was very young, but he died after 13 years in rule. When he died, his empire split. And the term which is used is diadochi. It split into a lot of pieces, actually. It split into so many different pieces that we know, for example, there are 4 major pieces that we normally talk about. Okay, the Ptolemies were in the south, the Seleucids, who were in the north, the Syrians, the Cassander are the ones who were in Macedonia. Okay, that's towards Greece area, and Lysimachus, who is Asia. In addition to them, to those 4 pieces that it splits, it also splits into Carthage, into the Greek states, Epirus, and also the Roman Republic. So really, out of the Alexander the Great's empire, there were 8 pieces. 4 of them were large, 4 of them were smaller initially, and 2 of them we care about. The ones we care about are the Ptolemies in Egypt and the Seleucids in Syria. And the reason why we care about them is because their point of contact was Eretz Yisrael. And so they kept on fighting over who Eretz Yisrael had. And when we talk about the story of Hanukkah that's coming up in a few weeks, we're talking about the Seleucid Greeks. Okay, Antiochus was a king of the Seleucids. He was part of the Greek. He wasn't the Greeks. He was a Greek. He was one of the different pieces. So if you look just on this historical sheet in English, I'll just go through it real quickly. The empire is going to be given to his successors. We'll see that in Pasuk Daled. And these are the king of the south, Ptolemy and his dynasty, who ruled in Egypt, emerging from there on their conquest, and the king of the north, Seleucus I and his dynasty, who ruled over Syria and over the lands of the Tigris and the Euphrates. So these 2 are the ones we really care about. The kings of the north would conquer Eretz Yisrael. Okay, it's the end of the 3rd century BCE, from the Ptolemies, from Egypt, who originally had them. Then came an alliance. The alliance was based on the marriage of Berenice, who was the daughter of Ptolemy Philadelphus from the south, with Antiochus II in the north. It was very common. You marry between peoples, and you have now a new peace. The only problem is it didn't really work out well, because Laodice, who was Antiochus's first wife, killed Berenice. Okay, she wasn't real happy about this Egyptian princess who came into her family. Killed her, murdered her by poisoning, and she died. Most of the family was killed at the same time. Her children as well were killed. However, Ptolemy III, the son of Bernice, okay, went ahead and took revenge against Seleucus, okay, and he went ahead, and there was a battle that took place because of this revenge. Then the children of Seleucus, known as Seleucus III, they're really not good on original names. Seleucus III and Antiochus III went against the king of the south. Okay, that's Ptolemy IV. So we're already another generation down until the Battle of Rafiach, okay, where the king of the south prevailed, and ultimately Antiochus III, north, defeated Ptolemy Epiphanes in Gaza and conquered Eretz Yisrael. So right now, that's Antiochus III gets Eretz Yisrael. So it's like this ping pong game that we're going back and forth with Eretz Yisrael. Antiochus wanted to take over his rule over Egypt. He had Cleopatra. That's not the famous. That's not Cleopatra with Mark Antony. It's a different Cleopatra. And he had to marry the northern Cleopatra. Had to marry the southern Ptolemy, but it failed. The northern then went ahead and he wanted to expand his empire. He went to Turkey and Greece, conquered them, but the Romans now are rising up, and Scipio goes ahead and he he defeats Antiochus, and as a result, Antiochus ends up dying. He's succeeded the north by Seleucus, who sends his minister Heliodorus, to go down to the Beit HaMikdash. Remember, now we're talking about these Seleucid Greeks, the Greeks who we think about from Hanukkah time. They go, they steal all the things out of the Beit HaMikdash, and then he's assassinated. And Seleucus's brother, Antiochus IV Epiphanes, the Antiochus from the Hanukkah story, he comes up, and he really begins to persecute the Jewish people. Interestingly, there was an heir. Seleucus IV had a child. Antiochus, however, ignored that, and he grabbed the power, and ultimately he sent Andronicus to kill Chonio, who was the Kohen Gadol at the time, and then we have Antiochus doing what going on down into Egypt and conquering it from the Ptolemies, and the way he conquered it is described through cunning, and we'll see all of this in the first 27 psukim of our parak. The reason I share this piece of history in advance is it makes life a lot easier. Why? Because first of all, we do have some historical background. We see how this dream is real. Now remember, according to those who don't believe in Torah Misinai, who don't accept Chazal's dating and the story of the canonization of Tanakh by the Anshe Knesset HaGdolah, they believe that Sefer Daniel was written in the time of the Hasmoneans. Well, it's a lot easier to write a prophecy about what already happened. Because if it's written in the time of the Hasmoneans, it's describing history as opposed to describing future. We don't accept that. We accept that this Daniel is being written as it's being proposed, and that this dream really foretold a lot of historical events. The big problem we're going to have in this parak, and the reason why it's going to take us at least 2 weeks to go through this parak, is there's a preponderance of pronouns. And that preponderance of pronouns leads us to guess, who are we talking about? Just as we had Yair Hakol at Malchut Yavan, and we don't know Yair Hakol at Malchut Yavan, who he was, who caused the people to be upset and to rise up against with or against the Greeks. We don't have an idea there. It doesn't have a name. It'd be much easier if there were names. Throughout this parak, we're going to have that same problem. And so it's going to get a little complicated. I find this sheet, by the way, very helpful. When I was reviewing it, I created the sheet, and then I started reviewing it, and hopefully it'll help out with us as well. So we're now in Pasuk. We're all the way over to Pasuk Gimel. We've made it really far, and Avamad Melech Gibor, and now will arise a powerful, heroic king. Who's the Melech Gibor? Well, Rashi says straight up, it's Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great is going to rise up, Umashal Mimshal Rav V'asa Kirtzono, and he is going to have a massive empire, Shilton Rav, the way the Reb Sajagon says, Shilton Atzum, a mighty dominion, V'asa Kirtzono, and he's going to do as he wants, as he pleases, explains Rashi, with Darius. He's going to knock off Darius. This, according to Chazal, that Darius, of course, was the final Darius, because remember, that's the way we count things. According to us, we understand up front that this is Darius III, who's much later in history, but still a Darius. He's going to be doing it. And when he is at his apex, He's standing. He is the most powerful that he will be. Rashi says, when he is going to be very powerful, he'll stand in his most powerful position. Tishaver malchuto means he's going to die. Alexander the Great dies. Philip died. His father, Philip, died in 336. Okay, and Alexander the Great dies in Babylonia in the year 323. Okay, so it's a 13-year reign is all there is of it, of the great Alexander the Great. It wasn't, he was a young man when he died. Vatechatz la'arba ruchot, and his monarchy is going to be divided up into the four winds, 4 parts. So again, if I think about the 4 parts, I have Ptolemy. Ptolemy is in the south, that's Egypt. Seleucus, who's Syrian. I have to the west, I have Mokdon, Cassander, and I have Lysimachus, who is in the north. No, it's actually Asia. Okay, it's Turkey area in there. So it's north, a little west, not as far west as you get into Greece or Macedonia itself. So I have those 4 areas, and this is the 4 pieces, as we understand it, the Arba Ruchot that are going to be divided into, Arba Ruchot HaShemayim, I'm sorry, going to be divided into the 4 pieces, V'lo la'achrito, but it's not going to be divided into any of his heirs. His natural heirs don't get a piece of it. It's going to be the generals who get it. V'lo kimashlo asher mashal, and they'll never be as powerful as Alexander the Great was. That's the way Rashi explains it. The Ralbag says it'll never be as big as Alexander's empire. I'm not sure if we can say that as simply. However, what's going to happen is, as the Medrash Daniel says, is also what's going to be not like him. It's going to keep on dividing. And we're going to keep on seeing it divided. Kitinatesh malchuto, his dominion, Alexander the Great, is going to be uprooted. And there's going to be other people as well who are going to take a piece of that pie. And those other people historically are Carthage, again, the Greek states, Epirus, the Roman Republic. Those are going to be smaller pieces. So there's going to be some big chunks. Really, the biggest chunks are the pieces of Asia, Syria, and Egypt. Those are the 3 biggest. The Macedonian piece is going to remain relatively small itself. Vayechazak melech hanegev umin sarav. And what's going to happen is Ptolemies in the south, okay, that's the Egyptians, the Negev, is going to be very powerful from his ministers. Seleucus was originally an officer under Ptolemy. And so Ptolemy is going to be powerful. He'll be the most powerful, more so than the north. That's why Rashi explains it. The Reed actually says, Umin Sarav, the Umin is an unnecessary Vav. It says, just should be understood is that this Melech Negev is going to be more powerful, Min Sarav, from any of the other people. And originally, again, we know that in the year 312, for example, they would come together, Seleucus and Ptolemy, to fight in Asa, as we saw, okay, against Antigonus. Vayechazek alav umashal. But what's going to happen is that ultimately, and this is the way Reb Sajagon says it, and this is the way Rav Meidan sees it, the north is ultimately going to overpower the south. And if you look back on that blue and white sheet I had, the kings of the north would conquer Eretz Yisrael at the end of the 3rd century BCE in the hands of the Ptolemies. Okay, so that's what this pasuk is describing. Initially, the south was the most powerful. The north was an outgrowth of the south, but ultimately the north, the Seleucids are going to take over. Mimshal Rab Mimshalto, and their dominion is going to be great. Uleket Shanim Yitchabru. And then there's going to be an alliance. Now, what's this alliance that's being referred to? The alliance is talking about Berenice, who's the daughter of Ptolemy Philadelphus, who's going to be offered to be the wife of Antiochus II up north. There's going to be, after a period of time, the north and the south are going to come together. They're going to create an alliance. And this is that alliance that we're talking about that was necessary in terms of the battle with Antigonus. Uvat melech hanegev tavo el melech hatzafon. And the princess of the south is going to go to the king of the north. That's Berenice that we know about. Lasot mesharim, to create mesharim. Now, the Mitzudat Sion says mesharim means a compromise, that it is a compromise, okay? Because a compromise is yashar, is straight, and noach lekulam, lezel, is straight and something that's comfortable for both sides. Interestingly, normally we learn that a compromise is something where neither side is happy. Okay, but the way we understand here the compromise is going to be something, this marriage will create something going on. But the problem is going to be that ultimately this won't stop this power struggle. And what's going to happen is it's not going to stay. Lo tatzar koach hazroa, says Rashi, that Berenice is going to be taken prisoner by the king of the north. Her and all of the people who came together with her. The Mitzudat David says that lo tatzar koach of the north, okay, he's going to continue to be upset. Explains the Malbim that, and Malbim uses the name Berenice. He says, he refers to Berenice by name. He says, after Berenice gave birth to a child with Antiochus II, her father, Ptolemy Philadelphus, dies, okay, and the first wife, Leodes, she goes ahead and she murders Berenice, poisoning her, killing all of the people in her party as well. And this is what it means in the pasuk, when she is given over, lamavet, explains the Ralbag, that Berenice is going to be turned over and she's going to be killed, be'itim. Now, interesting, be'itim, which means in the times. I don't know how, if anyone has the art scroll, how he translates be'itim. In her times of need. Okay, so be'itim, what's interesting, the parish that's ascribed to Reb Sajagon, Hamyuchas the Reb Sajagon, he says that first she's going to be placed in jail for a long time, that she's going to be murdered, but before that she was placed in jail by 18 for a period of time. The Malbim says that, okay, he's going to, that ultimately the one who manipulated everyone to get her taken captive and be killed, he's going to have his comeuppance afterwards. And at that point, there arose minetzer sharasheha kano, from the shoot of her offspring, a seat. Okay, in other words, there's going to be someone who's going to take over. After Berenice dies, her son is going to take over.
So she didn't kill, I thought she killed all.
Right, that's Rashi, and the problem is, it seems to be everyone was killed. So Rabbi Sajagon says it isn't a son of hers, but it's going to be one of her brothers is going to take over afterwards. Now, historically, we know that Berenice had a son, Ptolemy III, and Ptolemy III took over in Egypt. So there's a little bit of a problem, according to the way Chazal explain it. Did the first wife of Seleucus, of Antiochus, I'm sorry, the first wife of Antiochus, did she really murder everyone, or did she murder almost everyone? If she murdered everyone, then it's hard to say it's a son. If she only murdered some of them, and the son may have survived, so it's possible as well. Vayavo el achayil, and this person from the south, the next ruler of the south, who we're going to say, according to the history, was Ptolemy III, is going to go ahead with an army, vayavo b'ma'oz melech hatzafon, and he's going to attack him in his fortresses, ve'asavahem ve'chazik, and he's going to go to battle against them, and he's going to conquer the north. Okay, and this is, if you again going back to what Rav Meidan wrote, the successor Ptolemy, the third son of Berenice from the south, Egypt took revenge on Seleucus, the second son of Laodice from the north, and prevailed against him. Okay, so this is what's being described here. V'gam Eloheim im nischeim im klechem datam kesef v'zahav, and they're going to also loot their temples. Bishvi yavi mitzrayim, and they're going to bring everything back to Egypt, all of these riches. Who shanim ya'amod, and he's going to be there for a period of time. Mimelech hatzafon, from the time of the king of the north. So it's going to be a period of time from the king of the north. What does that mean? So Moshe Tzvi Segal explains, he was one of the contemporary commentators of Tanakh. He explains that he's going to hold back the south after they conquer, after they have this conquest against the north and loot their temples. They're going to hold back and not fight them anymore. Now, this was a tactical mistake because the south had the upper hand. And as a result, they could have decimated the north. But he felt he took his revenge for the murder of his mother and his family. He took it out pretty well. He went back home with a lot of wealth, getting shame. That was it. Had he really done more, the Ptolemies could have set back the Seleucids or destroyed the Seleucid Empire. It's always that question people have in war: when do you stop? Pasuk Tet, Uva b'malchut melech hanegev, and at that point, Uva b'malchut melech hanegev, he came to the monarchy of the king of the south. So who is coming? The who is coming is the king of the north. That after some time, what happens now is there's going to be a battle. The children fought back, as we talk about, the ones who had been destroyed by Ptolemy III, Seleucus II, his offspring, Seleucus III, and then later on Antiochus III, went ahead and began to wage war against the south. Uva, and they of the north began to go against the south. Vishav el admato. And he's going to go he's going to return back to his place. Now, where is back to his place? So if you remember again, we talk about the fact that there are all of these pronouns. Who's going back to his land? So it's the northern kingdoms are going to attack the southern kingdoms, and then they're going to go back north. This is going to be a long-standing battle, and as Rav Meidan pointed out, the history of it is you're going to have battle after battle until finally Antiochus III is going to defeat Ptolemy the fifth, okay, in Gaza in 201 BCE. So this is going to be going on. If you notice, it's going to be going on for 2 generations of kings. Seleucus III and then Antiochus III are going to be fighting against the south until they finally get even with the south. But right now, they go back up, Vishavel Admato. Uvanav Yitgaru, and his sons are going to continue to go against him. In other words, the sons of the north. Who's the sons of the north? This is Antiochus III already. Ve'asfu hamon chayalim rabim. And in this battle, they're going to gather all of this great armies. Uva, vo, v'shataf, v'avar, and they're going to defeat. Now, the word lishtov, shtifat kelim is washing dishes. Lishtov means like a rush of water. Okay, so we're describing it in a metaphor right now that the way they're going to come against the south, it's going to be a rush of all of these armies against the south, and they're going to go right through Shataf ve'avar. The Dat Mikra says Yizrom bechuska ve'avor et kol ha'ma'atzorim. They're going to just there's an English word that I'm trying to think of right now, and I apologize, I can't think of it. They're just going to rush right through like water is going to go straight across them. Ve'ashov ve'yitgaru ad me'uzo, and they're going to go back until they get to the fortress city of the king of the south. That fortress city we know is the Battle of Gaza we're talking about. Vayit Marmar, and they would wage war Melech HaNegev. Vayit Marmar Melech HaNegev. So this is going to be the battle is going to be a very, very bitter battle. Bitter battle. The Marmar uses this word, the bitterness of the Marmar. Vayatzav nilcham imo melech hatzafon, because the south is going to go and he's going to fight back against the north. V'hamid hamon rav, and he's going to bring up this massive army. Now the question is, who's bringing up the massive army? V'hamid hamon rav. V'nitana hamon biado, and this massive army is going to be captured by him. So he's going to assemble a massive army, he's going to fight him, and he's going to capture the massive army. So we don't know who's who. So if you look at it in this, the Reb Sajagon says that the king of the north is going to amass this massive army to fight the king of the south, and the king of the south is going to capture the massive army of the king of the north. However, the Ibn Ezra says the king of the south is going to amass this massive army, and then the Miyuchas Reb Sajagon says, and the king of the north is going to capture the massive army. All we know is there's a massive battle that's going to take place. We don't really know which way it is, and therefore Chazal go both ways, because it depends how you see this.
When you read this thing, it sort of sounds like the south won, and then they fought again, and then the north.
Yeah, so the south, it's true, but at this point in this description of this battle that we're taking, and we don't know if this is the battle over Rafia, this is the battle over Gaza, we don't know which battle this was. There were a lot of captives that were taken. Okay, we're not really sure, but it really, by the way, it doesn't diminish the dream in any way, because really what we're describing is just this massive battle. And so whether the massive battle is talking about this massive force here that was captured, well, you don't capture a massive force without a pretty big force yourself. Or it's a massive force from here that was captured, and you still would have to have a massive force. We just know this is a massive battle itself. Vanisa amon veram levavon. And he's going to take this mass of people, and what's going to happen is the king, according to Rashi, the king of the north is going to become very haughty, very confident in his abilities at this point. The Malbim says it's the exact opposite. The Malbim says the king of the south, who's captured all these people, is going to feel really good about himself right now. So whoever's at that point in this long-standing battle that continued for 2 generations, there's going to be one battle within the war, and that battle within the war, the one who has won the battle will think that he has done everything. Ve'ipil ribot v'lo ya'oz, and he is going to destroy myriads. Ribot is like ribot, right? And at the end, v'lo ya'oz, but he won't be the one who's going to succeed. So the person who winning a battle actually is going to lead him to losing the war. V'shav melech hatzafon, and then the king of the north is going to return. Ve'amid hamon, rav min harishon. He's going to get a bigger group than he had initially. So this army keeps on growing. Ulekei tzaitim shanim yavovo, and then after a number of years from the original war battles within this big war, and we're still in this whole section of time with Seleucus III and Antiochus III and Ptolemy IV and Ptolemy V. Yavovo, ultimately, he's going to succeed. B'chayil gadol v'chush rav, and he's going to be able to take all, because he had this great army and with this great victory that he has as well. Pasuk Yudalad. Uveitim. Now, again, when we have itim in those times, Rabim Yamdu al Melech HaNegev, a lot of people are going to rise up against the southern king. Now, I translated it as rise up. That's Reb Sajagon's translation. Yamdu al Melech HaNegev could also mean a lot of people are going to rise up to be with. Al can also be like im. So we're not, again, sure at all. The Ibn Ezra says it's going to be a lot of people are going to try to help out the southern king who was conquered by the northern king. Reb Sajagon says they're going to be fighting him. But Malbim says that if we look at the history, we see the Macedonians came to help out the Ptolemies. And so we see that the people are going to be coming not to fight against, but I'm sorry, I did it the other way around. That the Macedonians are taking advantage of the Ptolemies, and they're going to come and maybe they're fighting against. We don't really know for sure what this is describing. We do know that after a period of time, something's going to go on in the south. Uvenei fritzei amcha, and the sons of the wanton ones within your nation. Now, who are the fritzei amcha? Rashi says in the name of Reb Sajagon that these are the people who are not following Torah mitzvot among the Jewish people. Interestingly, the Dat Mikra says these are the people who we later refer to as the Mityavnim, as the Hellenists. Okay, Hellenists were people who gave up Torah mitzvos. Maybe these are the people who are joining into them. The Malbim says that these are the Jews who felt that they were going to support the north, the Seleucids, because of all of the troubles the Ptolemies had given them as a result. And they went ahead and they joined with Antiochus III in the battle, and they received him with great honor, and they helped him in the war, and ultimately they would lose tremendously. The Seleucids wouldn't be, giving them any kind of credit along the way. There is, and this is the second sheet I handed out, and I apologize, I didn't have it ready in time to send out to everyone who's online, but there is an interesting Rambam. Now the Rambam comes, and I'll read it, it comes in Hilchot Melachim, Perek Yud Aleph at the end, Halacha Daled, and it's highlighted there in yellow, so you can't miss it. And when we're talking about Pritzei Amacham, and here what happens is he wants to talk about this. The Rambam, it sounds completely different, but look where it ties in. Af Yeshua HaNotzri, even Jesus, Mashiach, who thought of himself as the Messiah, and he was killed by the court. Farnit Nabebo Daniel. Daniel, according to Rambam, already prophesied about him. Shenemar uvnei pritzei amcham. Okay, and because we talk about the people who have broken out, to the wanton ones from your nation, Yinasu lamid chazon v'nichshulu, which is the rest of the pasuk, who will try to uphold a prophecy, and they will fail. So according to the Rambam, this pasuk is actually talking later on in history, and he explains as follows. How do you see that Jesus failed? Is there not any greater failure? Because all the Nevi'im spoke about Mashiach Goel Yisrael Moshiach. What's the Mashiach going to do? He's going to redeem the Jews. He's going to save them. And he's going to gather in the exiles, right? And he's going to strengthen their commitment to Torah. But what about Jesus? What did he cause? He caused Labed Yisrael B'charev. The Jews were killed by sword. Ulefazer Sheiritam, and the Jews were scattered as a result of him. Ulahashpilam, and they were demeaned. Ulahachlif HaTorah, and he switched out the Torah. Ulahatot Rov HaOlam, Lavor Eloha, Lavod Elohami Baladei Hashem. And he convinced the rest of the world to worship a God besides God. God, lowercase g, versus Hashem. So when we talk about the Uvenei Pritzei Amcha Yinasu Lahamid Chazon V'Nichshalu, the Rambam actually takes this pasuk as talking about further later in Jewish history, towards the end of the era of the Chashmonaim, and we'll see Rashi actually agrees with this, and he says this actually refers to Yeshu. And then he gets in his swipe on Yeshu, which is a very good swipe. And if you remember, the Rambam lived among the Muslims, and the Rambam did not view Christianity as a religion of worshiping God, but worshiping idols, the Trinity, etc. Muslims have Muslims, he viewed it as a monotheistic religion. He didn't view Christianity as a monotheistic religion. Others would agree with that, especially Christianity, which was the most problematic. And here he just uses this say, Amcha yinasu la'amid chazon v'nichshalu. He says that's referring to Yeshu. But we're going to go back to before that period of time. And in fact, what we're going to see is, and I'm not sure if we're going to get to it today, but we're going to see that Rashi is also going to shift away from this period of history that we've been dealing with shortly and say that this vision of Daniel together with Gavriel HaMalach is going to take a longer range term of Jewish history. We're going to follow mostly the other ways. Vayavo melech hatzafon. And the king of the north is going to come. We're in Pasuk Tetvav. Vayishpoch solala. And he's going to create ramps. The way you conquer a fortified city is you build a ramp outside. We see that at Masada, right? You build a ramp, and with the way you build a ramp is you take a lot of earth and you keep on bringing it in until you build a ramp. So vayishpoch solala. I'm dumping out all of the earth to build this ramp. And he's the king of the north is going to do this against the king of the south. Okay. And Vilachad ir mivtzarot, and he's going to lay siege on the fortress cities. Uzroot hanegev lo ya'amodu. And the power, the zroa of the south will not be able to withstand this. Va'am mavcharav ve'en koach la'amod. Ve'am mavcharav, even though these were people that the South were a nation of elite fighters, they won't have the ability to fight against them. That's the explanation of Mitzudot David. Vayas habaylav, and at that moment, Vayas habaylav kirtzono, the king of the north is going to do as he pleases against the king of the south. This is Antiochus III we're referring to.
At this point, when you're talking, which is the king of the north?
The king of the north is Antiochus III. The king of the south is Ptolemy Epiphanes, who's Ptolemy the fifth. Okay. Ve'ein omed lefanav, and no one's going to stop him. Vaya'amod be'eretz hatzvi v'chalav yado. And this encounter is taking place. Eretz hatzvi is another term. We've had this before for Eretz Yisrael. Tzvi is also one of the ways of explaining of Chemda, the beloved land. Okay, Tzvi means v'tzave, to want, the chafetz. Reb Sajagon says actually the reason why it's called Eretz Tzvi is because Ratzon Tzivyon Borei, it's the ultimate desire of the king, of the creator himself. V'chalav yado. The king of the north is going to destroy the Eretz Yisrael. This is, again, if you remember, Ptolemy the fifth, Epiphanes, and he is the one, okay, who is going to try to expand everything in this reign. I'm sorry, the king of the north, I apologize, Antiochus III we're talking about. Now, Antiochus, the Antiochus III, Vayasem panav lavo betokev kol malchuto. And he now has a plan, Antiochus. He wants to extend his rule over everywhere. And this is and this was his plan to give his daughter Cleopatra. She's from the north, not the Cleopatra from the south. He's going to give his daughter Cleopatra to Ptolemy the fifth. And he figures by giving the daughter what he's going to be able to lahashchita. He thought that he's going to destroy the south with the assistance of his daughter, who's marrying into the south. Velo tamod velo lo tia. The only problem was his plan didn't work, explains Rashi. And velo lo tia, ultimately, he never was able to take over completely the southern kingdom. Says the Malbim, not because Cleopatra couldn't do it, but because his daughter Cleopatra ended up being more loyal, according to the Malbim, more loyal to Ptolemy the fifth than to her father, than her father Antiochus III. Now, what does he do? Vayashev, okay, he didn't get Egypt. So it says, Vayasem panav le'iyim. So he turned his focus to another part of the empire, Vilachad Rabim, And he conquered a lot of other parts of the empire. Now, what's the Iyim? The Iyim are the islands. The islands, the Greek islands, he's moving towards the other section. He's moving up all the way into Turkey as well. He wants to go, and he wants to take these islands, and the islands are from the Republic, the Roman Republic. This is now happening. Roman Republic was 509 to 527, or 527 to 509 to 27 BC. I apologize. V'ishpit katzin cherpatolo bilti cherpato yashivlo. And he goes out and he captures, v'ishpit, I'm sorry, and not captures, HaKadosh Baruch Hu stopped him when he goes by a katzin by a commander of the Romans. V'hishpit means he stopped his attempts to conquer. This is Scipio, the Roman Scipio in the year 190, where he tried to go. So Antiochus is going Turkey, Greece, he wants to conquer. He gets a lot of it, but Scipio in 190 at Magnesia stops him. And that's going to be the end of his life. And in fact, what's happening, and there is a medrash about this as well, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is stopping him, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu smote him with shchin. Rashi talks about this with boils. Vayashev panav l'mu'uzei artso. But what happens here is we say, okay, he now turns and he wants to go ahead and go back and increase his wealth based on his own country. What do you mean increase his wealth based on his own country? It explains the Malbim that he goes back home, he tries to tax his people in order to pay off the Roman consul Scipio who had conquered him, but his people, rebel against him. V'nichshal v'nafal v'lo yimatzeh. And they killed him, they assassinated him. So according to one explanation, according to the Malbim, which fits into the history, he was assassinated, Antiochus was assassinated. According to history, he was assassinated in Elam in 187. According to the Malbim, he was assassinated because after having been defeated by the Roman consul, he wanted to pay off the Roman consul, and he raised the taxes too high, and he got killed. Nowadays, we just vote him out of office. Rashi says, actually, okay, that he tried, that after he was smitten with boils, what he tries to do is go back home, but he dies on the way back home. We're not really sure which way it went. It seems to be the way the Malbim is talking. It's closer to the story that we have. We're going to pick this up next week, and we're going to go ahead and we pick up on Pasuk Chav. Then we're going to start having the story of Hanukkah with Antiochus Epiphanes, and we'll figure that out at that time. It's a pleasure to have everyone on board, and have a wonderful day.
Have a great week. Thank you.